Hey, hey, my friends. It's time for another Tumblers and True Crime Tuesday. Welcome, welcome. If you're new here, thanks for joining us. And if you've been here before, thanks for your continued support. It is noticed and greatly appreciated. Okay, so today's story is one that I literally saw last night. I had an entirely different story planned for y'all, but saw this and was like, wow, deft on that one. So here I am doing that one. Trust me, you absolutely want to hear this one. Let's get into it. Okay, today, mis amigos, we are in Oshawa, Canada. It's a quickly growing town about 31 miles north of Toronto, 31 miles northeast of Toronto. We're going to talk about a girl named Rory Hache. She's an 18-year-old born and raised resident. She comes from a pretty good family. Her family is in a long line of bikers. Her grandfather actually is the founder of one. I don't remember exactly what it's called, Satan's something or another's. As a child, she was known to be very smart and self-sufficient. She was also an Army cadet, even winning Cadet of the Year. But as with most children, her teen years weren't as smooth. Her mother, Shannon Dion, I think it's Shannon. Her mother, Shannon Dion's work schedule had kicked it to overdrive, and she was working 10 to 12-hour days, so she wasn't spending much time at home parenting Rory, which left Rory to her own devices. Shannon, Jesus. Shannon wasn't really worried at first because, as I've said, Rory was always a pretty independent child, but that wouldn't last. Once high school started, Rory began to hang out with a bad group of people, and we all know where that usually ends up. Within the first month, according to Shannon, good grief, Shannon, Rory would quickly slip into the world of drugs and other bad things. I think it was crystal meth that one of her friends gave her literally within the first month of high school. But by 2017, Rory was making great strides, or so it seemed, to better her life. She was living on her own, paying her own bills, and I'm pretty sure she was still attending school. I'll explain that in a sec. In August of 2017, Rory finds out that she's pregnant. She's thrilled, and she decides she's going to keep it. What should have been a joyous month did not end that way. At some point, Rory began to act weird. Her mother, Shannon, decides to take her into the hospital for a psych eval. I'm not sure if she just had like a psychotic break or if it was a drug-induced psychotic break, but if you look at the video from the hospital, she's sitting there like scratching herself. So something's wrong. They arrive and wait a bit, but Shannon and Rory's sister decide to leave Rory there in the care of the hospital. I don't know if they alerted anyone to them doing this, but as one would expect, about 15 minutes later, Rory got up and left. And as I watched this, have you ever screamed at a horror movie like, no, don't go in there, they're gonna kill you? That's literally how I felt watching the hospital footage as her mother and her sister left. I was like, no, don't leave. She's gonna dip out the moment y'all are gone. I was surprised she lasted the 15 minutes. But I suppose for them, hindsight is 20/20. And despite what people may think, or despite what anyone may think, people in a psychotic break will still lie to you and make you believe them, mainly because you really want to. Trust me, my little brother is schizophrenic. The moment our granny died, I call it the skits, it reared its wildly ugly head. He will not medicate himself. But that's another story. I just speak from experience knowing that they can tell you anything, and if you want to believe it, trust me, you're gonna believe it, unfortunately. But with my personal knowledge, I suspect she told them that she'd stay there until she was seen, which is why they felt comfortable leaving. Didn't work out. Rory was reported missing August 29th in 2017. I suspect the police checked all of Rory's usual haunts, and the family, of course, hung missing flyers with information on where she would, how old she is, what she looks like, where she would normally be found. But with very few leads to go on, the search quickly dried up. It was quiet until September 11th, when a fisherman and his grandson decide to have a day of grandfather-grandson bonding and go fishing in the Oshawa Harbor. What they fish out turns this lovely, lovely day into into not a lovely day. They fish out a human torso. Of course, the police are called and an investigation ensues. Since it was just a torso, there wasn't really much information they could glean from it that didn't involve science. Despite this, an autopsy was done on the torso. There were obvious signs of trauma, but the autopsy was ultimately ruled inconclusive. Again, it was just a torso. They couldn't really tell. They could tell that there was some trauma, like I said, because of course the head, arms, and lower half had been chopped off, but that's the most they could get. So they decided to get the torso DNA tested. It would be 2 months in November before they were able to identify the body. It was Rory Hache. The police now have a possible murder on their hands. And again, no leads. I say possible murder because we don't know how she died. Maybe, it could have been a drug overdose or something, and someone got afraid and disposed of the body, or maybe self-defense and someone got afraid and disposed of the body. So we don't know exactly what it is, which is why I say possible murder. On December 29th, a couple in a kind of duplex apartment, it has a basement apartment and a main floor apartment. They call a plumber out because for the last few days, maybe like 4 days, they've been having a few problems. The pipes seem to be clogged, and now it's starting to smell atrociously. So they have a plumber come out and check the drains. He finds a massive clog and tries to snake it from the main floor apartment, but he can't get anything out. So he decides to go to the basement apartment, which of course you would assume if you can't get it out through the upstairs apartment, you go to the basement. The basement is occupied by a 45-year-old man named Adam Strong. He's lived there for 14 years. He's a sometime gas clerk, an ex-security guard for some local movie sets, or a local movie set. No one actually specified. Anyway, he's an ex because, of course, he was fired. He likes knives, his boat, and BDSM. So he did things like leave insanely long reviews on porn. Wildly, insanely long reviews on porn. So yeah, I'll give you a moment of silence to let all of that sink in. Right. See, I'm going to go ahead and assume that you guys know where we're going with this. Good. He, for some reason, lets the plumber into his apartment to check the pipes. The plumber is able to better snake them from there. But what he's pulling out is wild. It's a wild mystery. It appears to be fleshy or meaty, but he's not exactly sure. The plumber, he's not exactly sure. After snaking out 15 pounds of this substance, matter, we're just going to go with matter, and still not being able to be done with the snaking, he decides it's probably time to call his boss and maybe the police, because what the entire F? So the police are called and the situation is explained, and of course, one poor cop goes out to this location. That poor cop. He's confronted by the plumber and the upstairs or the main floor residents who are waiting outside because they just can no longer wait inside. He's confronted by them and handed a plastic bag full of a substance. It's about 14 inches long. And he immediately knows, the police officer immediately knows, it's probably time to call in for reinforcements. He's going to need some backup. My thought process is, why would they send him out on a call alone where the person who called 911 verbatim said, we've probably pulled back like 10, 15 pounds of it looks like flesh type of stuff. Meat. We've been working on it for 3-4 hours now. We can't get it clear. I mean, come on. You know what? But I don't know how they relay the information to the officers, so ignore me. Anywho, When backup arrives, they go straight to the basement apartment where they're met by Adam, who says something along the lines of, "Oop, you got me. I guess the gig is up. It's a body. I was deskinning it. You want the rest? She's in the freezer." So, yeah. This, of course, leads to an immediate arrest. The apartment was searched where they found blood sprayed and streaked all over the walls and ceiling. It was disgusting. And not just because of the blood, but also, as you'll soon find out, also, yes, because of the blood. But no, really, also, it was just disgusting. Stuff and trash, literal trash everywhere. 14 years of trash is really what it was. And they found a pipe bomb, because why not? Why not have a body in a freezer and also a pipe bomb? Anyway, DNA testing would prove that it was Rory's blood all over the walls and the ceiling. Adam's semen was also found on her body. I would assume that because the part of her body that they found in the freezer was her head, and I guess maybe her legs and arms, because a torso was found earlier, if we recall. Anyway, but they also found an array of other items in his apartment, like a variety of naughty time toys, restraining devices, handcuffs, you get it. They also found Rory's shoes and a fillet knife in one of the kitchen drawers, covered in tissue matter. And we'll get back to that. At the station, Adam is charged with indignity to a body, because they didn't really know what happened to the body prior to him cutting her up, as we established before with the torso. When he's finally interviewed with his attorney for 3+ hours, Adam doesn't say anything. I mean, he speaks, but he doesn't say anything relevant to the crime. The investigators just end the interrogation because it's a waste of time. At this point, July of 2018, they've gotten the fillet knife we just spoke about. They've gotten it tested, and that tissue, it's not Rory's. The tissue that's on it is not Rory's. DNA tests show that it belongs to another girl, 19-year-old Candace Fitzpatrick, who went missing in the spring of 2008. That's right, 2008, 10 years ago. It is a knife with 10-year-old tissue on it in his kitchen drawer. She wasn't even reported missing until 2010. According to her family, they tried to report her missing in 2008, but due to her lifestyle, the police would not take the report seriously. She lived a pretty rough lifestyle. She dabbled with drugs and she was homeless, so they just assumed that she'd left or something. I'm not sure. These are my speculations. No one actually says that. Her family has their own speculations, of course, as well. So now they have a fleshy DNA of a person who's been missing on paper for 8 years, but no body. What they did discover was that Adam had a type. He liked petite brunette women. I'm guessing it's easier to control tiny women when you're cowardly. The scariest thing about this, though, is he went undetected for 10 years. No one knew what happened to Candace, but they did know that Rory had been killed by Adam, and Adam wasn't even on the police's radar. Wild. Anyway, it would be 11 months before police had another chance to interview Adam. He's way more talkative this time. Of course, he's now facing 2 charges of first-degree murder, but it also may be because they fed him. I'm sure everybody is more amiable when food is involved. He's so comfortable. He's even jovial. He talks about how well he's been treated in prison, among other nonsense. But soon they get to talking about Rory. Still just as jovial as Ufk. He asks how old Rory was and how much of her body they'd found. He talks about how it was an awesome idea to flush someone down the toilet. He says he just got greedy. That's how he got caught. I won't get into the particulars of everything he says about Rory, but I will say the defleshing began before he froze her body. I don't know how to explain this fully, but he put her in a bathtub full of hot water. I think he was trying to boil her flesh off. Good grief. When questioned about Candace, I'm not entirely sure, but I think he was asking for some sort of monetary compensation for giving out the location of her body. But overall, he didn't give them much information about Candace, and he didn't give them any information on how either girl had actually died. After about 12 hours of interviewing, they call it a quits. I didn't tell many specifics from the interview, but it's horrible. He actually tells the detectives to give her family his condolences. So I'm guessing they got all the information they could. And honestly, since he's really a vile human being with no remorse. I'm sure the detective wanted to peace out as soon as possible. All right, people. Looks like this one's going to be a little bit longer than usual. So come back for part 3. I'm not sure what cup we're going to use for that, but it'll be posted soon here after this one. I hope you've enjoyed what you've seen so far. I love you guys. Meet me back here for part 3 so we can finish this wild story. Enjoy the rest of this pretty cup.